Take Woody and Harker with you! Hi folks, it's me, the Bee, and welcome back to another review. Today I'm going to talk about something very special to my heart. The Doom video game franchise, made back in 1993 and still going strong by id Software. So before I launch into my, well, let me just get this out there now. This is not going to be a review of every single game in the franchise because, let's face it, there are video game reviewers out there that have done it far better than I ever could. And besides, you don't want to hear me go into that shit. Before I continue, I'm just going to talk about my own personal experience. Now, my first Doom was Doom 2 back in 1995 when Papa Harper, bless his soul, installed the game into our computer. And, oh, by the way, those of you who are younger than 30, Doom 2, or rather, the Doom series originally came on discs, and you originally were able to install them into the computer. And now, I'm sorry, I'm being very confusing. Anyway, when I saw my father play the game, I was instantly besotted, and my father, being the badass he was, let me play it. And let me tell you, I don't think I ever felt so much controlled bloodlust in my life. It was the best experience ever. Now, when it comes to first-person shooters, I'm not a connoisseur, so therefore I can't quantify my experiences with Doom with any other franchise, because, you know, first-person shooters have never really held an appeal to me, which brings me to what makes Doom so special. Well, let me tell you, even though in the first place I never really understood, it wasn't until much later I was able to rather categorize why I felt so differently about this series. Now, Doom has never been accused of being particularly deep, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't wear its inspiration on its gory, bloody, gruey sleeves. Now, namely, these inspirations are heavy metal and H.P. Lovecraft. Heavy metal, I'm not hugely into, but, well, up until recently, that is. And two, H.P. Lovecraft, as you know, I love. But what is it about this combination that works so well? To me, it strikes on a very primal level. Every single human being is capable of violence. And when you are given the opportunity to act on that, preferably in a controlled environment, we will do it. I don't care if you are a nun or a priest or, I don't know, some sort of barefoot saint. If you are given the possibility of blowing away hellish infernal demons on a computer, you will do it. And it is perhaps one of the most cathartic experiences that you could possibly have. Now, originally, Doom was the brainchild of John Carmack, Tom Hall, and John Romero. No relation to George, I don't think. And it's interesting. Games these days are seen as artistic expressions of, or rather, legitimate artistic expressions. And it's true. There is so much passion and detail put into what we put into our consoles or into our computers. But back in the early 90s, and rather the late 80s, you know, video games were just seen as fluffy entertainment. And quite frankly, the early Doom series was no exception. As I said, it doesn't pretend to be anything more than what it is. But when you think about these guys in this cramped little office, you have to understand, like, when these guys were young, that is when they made this game. Like, I think two of them were in their 20s and one of them was in their 30s. And this was back when video games were seen strictly as superficial. But when it comes to passion, when it comes to legitimate artistic passion, there is no stopping anybody. And I can just imagine these guys in their cramped office in the early 90s, you know, day in, day out, late nights, lots of pizza, lots of blaring heavy metal music in their ears. This sort of passion and inspiration it's not really something that is truly appreciated these days. Now, that's not to say it doesn't exist, because it does. Just look at any sort of Naughty Dog video game, or hell, Rockstar game. But when it comes to something as simplistic as Doom, we don't necessarily associate simplicity, or rather simplicity with any sort of deep sensation of passion and obligation. But in the case of Doom, there was no other way to do it. You have to appreciate that these guys were working on a schedule, but at the same time, they wanted to deliver the best product they possibly could. You know, with every single cent they had, and they didn't have a lot of money when they made the first game. Understand that. With every cent of money they had, they put it on the screen. They didn't skimp. They didn't spare. They wanted to deliver the product they wanted. They wanted to give you the game you wanted to play and the game they wanted to play. Everybody was happy. So now, yeah, when it comes to heavy metal in terms of inspiration for Doom, well, you can see it on the cover art of the games. You will see Doom Guy or Doom Dude or whatever you want to call him. You know, he is surrounded by all these hellish creatures, and they're just, you know, wanting to tear him to shreds. And here he is, this Frazetta hero figure, like just holding them by the throat and shooting a gun. Like, it is a classic example of the stereotypical hero trope. And you know what? I'm totally cool with that. Once again, simplicity does not mean lack of passion. Okay, and when you see these pictures and you see how they are influenced by any sort of heavy metal or death metal or black metal you can think of, you can see these guys were not making any secrets about the product they were making. And also the music in the games, a lot of them have a lot of very common strings with what you hear in a heavy metal, you know, heavy metal song. Now, once again, I'm not a huge connoisseur when it comes to heavy metal. In fact, I don't think I can name like 5 of them unless I actually had them in front of me. But, you know, if you listen to them side by side, you can hear it. And it's just so inspirational to see these guys working so hard to deliver a product. And even though they probably knew that their product would be scoffed on, people would still play it. And you got to applaud something like that. Now, here is something that I do know about. H.P. Lovecraft. Think about it. The Doom franchise is all about a door to hell being opened and all these eldritch creatures like coming from other dimensions and just like taking over the earth and subjecting humans to their will. Some doors were never supposed to be opened, and in the case of Doom, it is just another example of how powerful and influential H.P. Lovecraft's work was. Even if you look at the creature designs, you don't know what the hell they're supposed to be. I mean, some of them are like a kind of Minotaur and Chimera-esque and that sort of stuff, but other ones just defy like common reasoning. And isn't that what Lovecraftian horror is all about? You don't know what you're looking at, but what you do know is that it is absolutely horrifying because it's trying to kill you. And on a very sort of lesser note, and once again, I'm not an expert at this whatsoever, Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is one of those seminal RPGs, and absolutely everybody worth their salt, if they consider themselves a nerd, that they sit around a table and play it. Now, as somebody who has not played it at all, I can't really go into too much detail about this, but there is no mistaking but that this sort of influence of, you know, the RPG influence is about, you know, upgrading your character, making him stronger, and giving him all these brand new tools to take on these violent, malignant creatures. That is another sort of Dungeons and Dragons sort of thing. Look, Doom is simple to the highest order, but that doesn't mean that it's inferior. And people still insist that, you know, this game is just for idiots. I don't think so. Doom is for people who just want to take out some unbridled anger, but at the same time, it also taps into that notion of primal horror. And maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but if you put yourself into the position of a Doom Guy, and by the way, Doom Guy doesn't really have much to say. He's not a very verbal character. That means you can put yourself into this guy's shoes, literally. So if you were this guy, and if you were experiencing this horror, you know, full on, you know, that this game actually puts you into this character's shoes. It's not like you know, an outside perspective. You are Doom Guy. This is you blowing all these creatures away and dealing with this cosmic menace that is threatening to, you know, overcome the human species. It's simple, it's easy, it's basic, but at the same time, it is absolutely brilliant. And when you compare it to, action hero tropes, what really separates Doomguy from Arnold Schwarzenegger? I mean, everybody loves, or rather, everybody is familiar with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the sort of characters he has played. And that is what made his career. He played the overpowered super guy, and even though more complex and layered characters are interesting, there is a vicarious thrill playing as somebody who is an absolute badass. Doom is a very empowering franchise, and even if some other entries of the series haven't been as equal in value, it is still the idea. It is still the essential part of what makes Doom so enduring. It's, obviously I can't think of anything of particular interest to say, but when it comes to personal perceptions, it really does depend on how you choose to look at it. And in my case, Doom, it empowers me. It empowers me on a very sort of a primal and base level. And I feel if you look into yourself, you can't judge somebody for wanting to have that experience. And look at it this way. It is better to play this sort of stuff on a screen in the comfort and safety of your own home than going out there and killing people with real guns. It's a very sort of a cut and dry sort of statement, I know, but when you look at it from this day and age, you need something like Doom to keep yourself happy. You know? And yeah, Doom, man, Doom. Now, what else do I have to say about this series? Well, for one thing, I feel another reason why it has been so successful is as long as it keeps to its roots, that is what keeps it going. And when it comes to the latest installment that I spoke about very briefly earlier, it keeps the spirit alive. And if they continue to keep this this sensation and these inspirations and the reason why this game is so successful, that is where I feel the longevity comes from. Yes, heavy metal. Yes, Lovecraft. But it's just the elegant and wonderful bloody simplicity that keeps Doom the way it is. And may I say, Doom over Duke Nukem. I said it. I fucking said it. So, I really do apologize for the fact that I really rambled about this, but Doom is a fantastic series, and its brilliance comes from just how simplistic it is. And people may mock you and say that, that they are far more classy than you are and blah, 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 blah. I don't give a shit. But the thing is, Doom is an essential part of our pop culture. It has helped make what video games are today. And without Doom, I don't think we would have got half of the titles that we get in terms of gameplay or in terms of ideas, anything. So there is no doubt that Doom is as relevant and essential as it was, as it is today. Yeah. Thank you for listening to me ramble, guys, and as usual, I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now.